What is good, beautiful people? Good to see you all. I'm here joined by the host, Ivan Gomez. Ivan, how are you feeling today? It's a beautiful morning.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit excited. I mean, Daniel and I have been toying around with LinkedIn audio for a few weeks and kept it much on the low. There was a lot of glitches, but it seems to be working perfectly. So I kind of consider this our sort of first inaugural sort of proper meetup here, and let's make it count.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a few months now. That we've been testing it, LinkedIn audio, very much like Twitter Space early days. There's a lot of issues, right? Though it's great to have a phenomenal group of people on the panel today, and we'll be doing this continuously every fortnight. So if you would like to speak, if you would like to be featured as a guest speaker, you are more than welcome to DM Ivan or myself, as we'll be scheduling for October and the rest of the year as these expand. I think today we had 100 plus people that clicked attend, and obviously LinkedIn algorithms work a bit different to Twitter, though we're keen to see some beautiful numbers here today. Let's go quickly around the room. A 30-second intro for everybody. We'll start off with just from the names that I can see on my screen and my end. We're going to go to Laia, Nick, Charlie, Daniel, and Sophie. Laia, jump in. Give us an intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah. I am Head of Investor Relations at Reinventure Group, which is a venture capital fund. But today I'll be speaking in my personal capacity. I'm also New South Wales chapter lead for Australian DeFi Association, and I contribute content to a couple of online publications, basically just focused on beginner level Web3 content. And quite early in my DAO journey, but excited for the chat today.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Leah. Let's jump in, Nick.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Can you hear me all right?
Can hear you well.
All right, perfect. I can hear you.
Hey, everybody. Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Nick James. I'm the founder of Web3 Texas. We're doing business as Web3 Texas. The name of our 501c3 is actually Web3 Earth, and I might give you an indication of what our mission is. So simply put it, our mission is to make Web3 accessible to all through multi-dimensional learning experiences and value-driven communities. Okay? It's a fancy way of saying our core products are to deliver fundamental, unbiased, and free education to the community to fuel adoption and enable adoption, basically for the future customers of Web3. So for all those builders out there, Web3 Texas is working very hard in ensuring that you will have new customers in the future. And essentially, we're also building Web3 Earth, which is basically a franchise model per se. And we're going to be recreating the template we create here in Texas all around the world, creating these educational communities where people can come and connect in a physical way. So that's me. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Nick. Throw it to Charlie.
Hey Daniel, hey Ivan, thanks very much for having us, guys. I think this is a really cool idea, and I definitely see a lot of legs to LinkedIn Space as opposed to Twitter Spaces, or on top of Twitter Spaces rather. My name's Charlie. I'm a full-time DGen consultant, like trade specifically in the area of transitioning Web2 businesses to Web3. I'm a member of a business DAO, which is completely decentralized. However, the company is called Constellation Network. They're based in San Francisco, and we're responsible for basically vetting which projects come and build on their protocol, and then assume ad hoc consultancy positions as well. So that's my short summary. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks, Charlie. Throw it to Sophie and then Daniel.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Sophie. I'm based out in Western Australia. So if anyone knows Perth, and I see that a whole bunch of people that I invited to be here, I'm grateful that people could make it. Look, I'm a consultant in the crypto space and have been for quite some time. And at the moment, I'm crypto and finance analyst with Ocean Floor Music, and I'm so fascinated to see what's happening in this space with the Web3 market and Web3 music businesses particularly. So I am involved with We're a Music DAO and other research DAOs. I mean, as a fundamental analyst also, I really like to understand, what's the research and the thinking around, how we can organise ourselves as commons communities. And I really want to speak on a more personal capacity today, like Laia. And so I'm really grateful to be here. So yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophie. Jump in, Daniel, and then we'll kick off the conversation. Yeah, hey, I'm GM, everybody. I'm Dan. I'm a founder of DAO Master Labs. We're a Web3 DeFi consulting company, pretty much providing deep tech for companies and for new projects in the space, so tokenomics, gamification, DAO dissemination, treasury management, and a smattering of others. I'm currently DAO Master over at Motor DAO, which is a music DAO for fair ownership rights for musicians on chain, and I'm also DAO Master at Pommel Better Health, which is a move to earn platform based out of the Gold Coast. Beautiful. Let's get into this, people.
Daniel, before we kick in, just a bit of context for everyone. So with Pixel Boss, it's been a year and a half in the making, and only about 2 weeks ago we had a founders event, our official event for our Pixel Boss Club, which is going to be basically 100 members that get on board between our end of the year. It's about very much like this, where we can work, collaborate together, have a look at our pages. We've started to share on it. But the thing that inspired our structure of our club, and it's not run as a DAO yet, but it will be in the future, is having that sort of, that decentralized, that sort of common voice. Everyone can have a say. I've sat on boards, I've run in companies, I've been CEOs of many companies in my last 30 years, and it's a very different approach to doing business, which resonates with me, and it's why this space will win. That's something that I wanted to touch on. And then lastly, in case I forget later, what we're going to announce next week is our agency. Our agency is made up of 3 key founding partners. As a creative Web3 agency, we'll offer certain services, but what we want to do over and above everything is no different to how we've built our Web2 agency, and that's where we bring in experts when we're doing major documentaries or TV commercials, and that's how we've always been able to deliver at a really high level. For us to have people of that level ongoing would have a payroll of $2 million a week. It's unattainable, it's unnecessary. So my ask and my want is for anyone that's here, once you start seeing our agency later next week, if you create a product or a service that we can use when we're working with automotive or sports, like we are pitching our agency services, not being, not rude about this, but we are going for the top end of town. So we need those people around us. So that's an invitation for anyone. So if it is something to do with tokenomics, it's not going to be our internal team. We'll put forward 1 or 2 preferred suppliers, and then we get going, and everybody knows where they stand from the start, and we all know where we want to end, and we evolve from there. I just wanted to get that off my chest, and thank you. Over to you, Daniel.
You're good, Ivan. Let's jump into this conversation, just so I can see everyone from the audience. Throw up a love heart if you can hear my voice nice and clearly. Throw up a laughing emoji if you can't, and if I sound funny. Loves, I see hearts everywhere. For the speakers, spam the love hearts if you want to jump in the conversation, because on my end, it's a bit delayed, though we'll get into the conversation. I want to throw this to Dan, because we did a podcast when I was over in the Gold Coast, and I have never heard anyone explain DAOs in such a simple form that was easy to digest, considering the top-up approach compared to the horizontal approach. Dan, in terms of organizations, what is a DAO? How do you define it? You talk to hundreds of people all the time about DAOs. How do you define it? Let's jump in.
I guess the best way to think about a DAO is it's a way for communities to come together and govern a project and essentially deliver on a core mission. We were having a huge conversation about it the other day, and the last thing you need to do is try and explain to someone a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, because unless you're someone in Web3 or delivering Web3 services or products, you're probably going to get really bored halfway through that a massive sentence. So the best way to think about it is it's just it's almost a form of Web3 democracy in a way. And really it is just a community coming together to deliver on a core mission and achieve something together.
Now let's dive into DAOs, how they operate, but more so how they best work. I want to throw this to Leah, not Laia, Leah. I know you mentioned your name, so it is Leah, correct?
Yes, exactly. It's just a weird spelling, but pronounced as Leah.
Leah, beautiful. How do DAOs best work? How do you guys, Leah, I'll throw this to Leah and Nick on this one. How do you guys think DAOs best work? What needs to happen?
Well, I think DAOs, and again, I bring sort of more of a beginner hat, I think, to this conversation, but for me, it's sort of no different to an old school co-op, right? So a group of people that share financial resources, and the difference here in innovation is the fact that it's on chain. And essentially your constitution or set of rules or an agreement is within the smart contract, and that's what sets it apart. And for me, I think the two big use cases for DAOs is experimentation and efficiency. So I think they work really well when it comes to experimenting with new forms. And I'm involved in a couple of DAOs that are experimenting in investments or law, for example, or where you're looking for efficiency. So where you're trying to pool assets together to maybe buy or invest or deploy capital in some other way. So I think for me, that's kind of how they work best through experimentation or efficiency. I think DAO structure doesn't work for everything. So there are, particular ways in which I think they work best.
How about yourself, Nick? Being over the pond, you've probably seen a variety of different DAOs. Majority of our audience is in Australia and APAC region.
Yeah.
How about on the other side of the world? I know we're on the internet.
Leah, I don't know how to follow that. That was really good. Great description. So instead of repeating what you said in different words, I'll take a different approach. I think if we look at history, and most recently for the techies on the call, something called containerization. Okay, back in the day when we were building apps, right? We were building these monolithic apps that were very heavy. They were sort of like turning the Titanic, right? It was just, in order to make a change, it was just sort of everything moved at glacial paces. And we moved into this era of containerization, which seek to decouple these applications and make them smaller entities where you can take units of code and change that code, and it's modularized to where you can just insert that code and the application just sort of accepts it, absorbs it like a new appendage on a body, and it continues to function, right? And we're sort of seeing the same things where, especially with the lack of trust or the distrust that has been placed in society with large, governance structures, corporate structures, government structures, especially in 2008 with the housing market crash and the birth of Bitcoin. I think that we are looking to decouple this and change how decisions are made for for coordination of large sums of capital and large sums of humans, right? And human capital. So I think that the best way to say that DAOs, should work is to really center themselves on a core set of values that everybody agrees to, and in a democratic approach can put that capital to work and put the humans to work to do meaningful things in society.
I'm just going to jump in. This is just, again, you don't need to participate if you don't want, but I think those that don't are doing themselves a disservice. My ask to everyone in this room is, after this is all said and done, on your own page or DM us if you want to be incognito, call out one thing that you got from this session. Right, that's number one. The other thing, DM Daniel I with something that you would love to participate in. We're going to publish that as an article. We really want to sort of play out, this whole idea of learning and teaching. It's, internally, it's a push-pull scenario, and I think there's a lot to be gained by sharing that intel and those thoughts. And then we'll start a private group, particularly on this alone, so we can all continue the conversation. All right, cheers, because we will run out of time. There's so many bloody amazing people here. So thank you.
Yeah, agreed, right? These spaces, we take them almost like a DAO approach on a live session without a formal constitution. though it's about getting your feedback and seeing where we can plug in continuously and paint your vision through these spaces and the Twitter spaces that we do hold. Jumping to Charlie and Sophie, I want to talk about incentivization of DAOs. Right now we see every third project building a DAO, building staking tools. It's great. It's phenomenal. Though what we don't see is continuous support from the members that are DAO members. And the biggest problem that I've seen is having these DAO members continuously participate. How do you think we solve that problem, Charlie and Sophie?
Do you want to go first, Sophie, or do you want me to lead?
Oh, look, I just really wanted to say that's a very interesting conversation, because I think what precedes incentivization is actually like how a DAO's kind of like encouraging community involvement. Because, I mean, to be incentivized is, I think, a reflection of your interest in the purpose of the DAO. And look, I had the privilege yesterday of speaking to a DAO architect, and he works internationally and is based here in WA. And it was really interesting to get a perspective on various ways that DAOs can actually bring together incentive schemes that help you to, contribute your work. So I'm involved mostly in research DAOs, so it's kind of the bleak end of the scale where you're contributing your information, analysis, or you're using other people's information and analysis. And to be honest, there's a very, very high degree of engagement without any form of official incentivization that looks like a token. It's just an incredibly engaged group of people who want to be sharing to further a common purpose, whether it be for, music analytics, data analytics, information sharing that can help you to improve fundamental analysis in the communities that you're actually involved in or consulting in. So incentivization doesn't necessarily have to look always like some form of, I think, capital, payment or token payment, but it certainly could. There's something special, I think, about research communities where people are just naturally very highly engaged. And, from a personal perspective, I really don't receive capital from the researchers and communities that I'm involved in, but I certainly contribute a lot and get a lot of value from helping push boundaries, I think, and how we can think about, the music industry for a start, or how we can think about, fundamental analysis and education projects. I mean, Charlie, you might have a more specific view on that. I'd be happy to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So circling back to what both Leah and Nick said in the context of incentivization, however, I found in terms of operating in DAOs, in the sense of efficiency, which was, as Leah said, the best way, or one of the most prominent ways for them to operate, I think that we have to be careful on, the amount of decisions that we're requesting the organisation answers. And then going into what Nick said, if we were to compare this to a standard organisation and say, look, we're making a decision about marketing, it wouldn't make sense for us to circle in with those that are responsible in CFO. So then that's where a modular structure and each specific subgroup or sub-module has a set area of responsibilities which they answer to. And then that ensures that, I'm answering to areas which are my interest, and then not engaging people who the specific area might not be their highest priority. But in terms of that as well, I've found that delegation has been a really useful tool for me to keep people incentivized, because if a DAO does require a high frequency of voting, it's easy for me to say, okay, I've seen Daniel's values, I align with him, so when I'm not able to participate, I'm going to delegate my vote to him. And yeah, so I feel like that those sort of three areas are the ways that I've seen the best way for incentivization to run efficiently in DAOs. Otherwise, people tend to lose interest if they're getting bombarded. It's the same as like a spam email. You might reply to one, but if you're getting 5 or 10 a day, it's hard to keep up.
Very well said. I like the idea of modular structures, and you've broken that down to me in person. And the idea of get delegation, right? when we look at a DAO, we need to, depending how big, the leaders have to be established over time. Like Charlie said, you can't have the CTO jumping on every small decision, like the color of, the paint on the office walls, and making sure that Charlie wants it green, but Sophie wants it, blue. And you can't have everyone on the DAO voting on the color of the paint, but for the important decisions and the weight of those decisions. I know, Charlie, you mentioned having each questions of the DAO as different, like a point system. So some questions are weighed a bit more than others. Could you explain and touch on that and how that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're referring to quadratic voting and quadratic funding. I'd be interested to hear the other panelists' thoughts on this, but basically a high level explanation is if you have decisions where there is, say, strong yes or strong no, and there's no, say, repercussions of voting a strong yes, what you see is a sense of like polarization in votes. And we're typically seeing this in current political systems. I think that in the last presidential election, going back to I think it was 2016, but if quadratic voting was used in the US presidential election, neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump would have actually been the elected candidates for either party, because each side had such polarized groups on the opposition who didn't agree with their decisions. And so in order to get, I guess, a more democratized and truthful sense of perception and values, a quadratic voting system has been proven to be quite effective at doing so. And effectively, how it works is you might get a pool of votes, say 100, and then 10 different questions to answer across a specific set of time. If I was to give one vote to one specific question, it would equal 1, but then that multiplies. So if I was to give 2 to one, the next question, then that takes away 4 from my total pool of 100 votes, and then so on. There's 3 votes for 1, it takes away 9. And so it makes people be a little bit more reserved, and instead of going far to one side or far to the other, it's a lot truer sense of where people's priorities actually lie, because there's a sense of scarcity to where the votes actually go. So that's the quadratic voting system, which I'm pretty fond of. And yeah, I think that in terms of moving forward, current voting systems of, say, like one token, one vote have proven to be flawed. So I think that's where the industry's likely to go for now.
And before I jump into the next question, speakers, if you want to react to love heart to jump in the conversation, just so I know, because I can't see the mics flashing on and off. So if you do want to comment on something.
Just a quick question. How do you do the reactions? Because I've been trying to do them and I think I'm...
So if you look at your bottom right, everyone, you can see, for the speakers, you can see invite, react, and mute. So if you tap the react button, you'll see 4 buttons that come up, and you can hit the love heart. For moving forward, I did want to touch on use cases of DAOs and actual DAOs that exist today. I'd love to throw this to Nick and then Daniel. Within your communities or within your own projects, what have you seen the best use cases of a DAO? Let's touch on that.
I'd be happy to jump in. So I think we should be, as we're moving forward on popularizing and adopting the DAO structures, we should be thinking about a sort of a suitability assessment, because the DAO structure isn't for everyone. But I think let's talk about the Web3 Earth model. Okay, so the Web3 Earth model puts forward a model where we call them operators, okay, who are throughout the world, who have responsibility to oversee their geographic region when they deploy a Web3 Earth community. Okay, let's say it's Canada, or let's say it's Australia. Right? So there's Web3 Australia. That operator, right, the person who oversees Web3 Australia under Web3 Earth, would definitely need to have some sort of say in the direction of Web3 Earth, given their stake, right? Now, talking about quadratic voting, maybe we use quadratic voting as in a way which signifies the weight of certain votes based on population size of communities, right? So for us, that's the way that it makes sense. I'd love to hear other perspectives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in there. In terms of like where DAOs have worked and problem statements for DAOs to solve, this might get a bit weedy, but I've been doing some research recently, and I kind of come across some really interesting ideas. So I think decentralization, it's important in a few environments. One of them is concave environments. The other one is censorship resistant, and the other one is credible fairness. To kind of break those down for a really high level, a concave decision is something that requires like a compromise, for example, and a convex decision requires a coin flip. So a convex decision, you could think of it maybe like the pandemic response, for example. So either you could do a 100% travel ban across the world, which is kind of what they did to try and keep the virus out, or you could do a 0% travel ban, which won't stop viruses, but at least it doesn't inconvenience people. In that situation, you wouldn't want to do like 50% or 90% travel ban, because that's kind of the worst of both worlds. And then a concave decision where you're looking for some sort of compromise, you can think of it like tax rates, because this kind of comes back into quadratics with economics. So a tax rate of X% is like a quarter as harmful as a tax rate of 2X%. And at the same time, it's more than half as good at raising revenue. So moderate taxes are better than a coin flip between low or no taxes and high taxes. Then when you start to think about censorship resistance within decentralization, a really good example of censorship resistance is Make a DAO or Reflex a DAO. They're both really good examples of that. They pretty much, a censorship resistant DAO should aim to evade permanent censorship, instability and disruption. And so Make a DAO and Reflex a DAO are doing both of those pretty well. In terms of like credible fairness, you want to be making sure that it's kind of like DAOs need to be able to make sure that people trust what the DAO is doing. That because the DAO is decentralized by nature, that the DAO cannot be manipulated by a centralized entity. And a really good way to kind of bring this into context is at Moda DAO, one of our tasks as a DAO is that we essentially want to make sure that people understand and trust that we are not manipulated by the traditional music industry, for example, which is obviously really centralized. It's our job to bring fair ownership rights to musicians on chain. It's not our job to take money from musicians on chain. And that's kind of like a reverse model of what's existed over the past, 50 years or so. So those are kind of like three really good reasons to have a DAO. And so, yeah, like I said, Make a DAO is a fantastic example. Reflex a DAO is a really good one. I like what Mutant Cats are doing as NFTs. I like what Decentraland is doing with how they've approached voting and whatnot. And then, of course, at Moda DAO, the way that we're approaching everything too. So, yeah, that's kind of like we could go in the weeds a little bit, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. But that's kind of like a high-level understanding of where DAOs kind of fit into the picture.
I'm just going to jump in there a little bit. For those that aren't familiar with a lot of these different sort of Web3 sort of players, it depends on your organization. It depends on the industry you're in and how you think you can sort of lean into this technology and onboard your core business. The clever thing, this will open up new gateways, new channels, new verticals. But, tokenomics, NFTs and DAOs are completely different, but they're the things to get your head around. From a DAO perspective, the idea, and my prediction is that in the next 24 months, DAOs will be massive for traditional Web2 businesses, because at the moment you've got organizations spending crazy money on above the line, so traditional advertising, they're digital, and they're paying to be heard, but they're not getting they're not creating engagement. A DAO is going to create engagement. So I see an FMCG brand automotive company taking 10-20% of their revenue, putting it into their community. The community now has control of what happens with that money. So they can vote to support a local community. They can buy a venue. They can do crazy cool things. The only thing that matters is that the community cares. Once a community cares, you have true engagement, and it will snowball from there. We're doing something to do with franchise and food for one of our projects, but something that you could look into at the moment in San Fran. I don't remember the shopping strip or the area, but they've started to open bricks and mortar businesses run by a DAO. So the person opening up the store owns a percentage of the store. The rest of that business is going to be owned by the community. Now, the community vote on what brands they sell, what furniture they sell, who works there, who doesn't work there. They run the show. And it's just black and white, and it is a massive game changer. Anyway, I talk a lot, so I'll shut up.
I'm just going to jump in on the back of that, Ivan, because I reckon you've hit that spot on. The area that I really see implementation for, or DAO implementation for Web2 businesses is really that alignment, organizational decision making, and community values. And I think the main thing from there, which is an area I'm really passionate about, is a flip from the top down to the bottom up. And so instead of the top down decision making in that, say, like a C-suite deciding where capital and resources are channeled, it actually gives the community a voice, and it gives them an equal say and playing field. So instead of, the top down saying, okay, this is what you need, it's really a sense of alignment with values, needs, and also priorities. So yeah, that's I 100% agree with you on that.
I saw Nick and Leah's mic flash, and jump in, Nick and Leah.
Yeah, Leah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Ivan was saying in sort of Web2 perspective. I think from my end, I'm most excited about obviously community DAOs, which are very prevalent at the moment, but also service DAOs and how they will, or the potential that they have to really transform the consulting industry, like in a traditional form. So if those of you in Australia who are familiar with, say, Expert 360 business that sort of works with consultants, individual consultants, I think a DAO structure for that would be really interesting, because again, it goes back to efficiency and the ability to kind of pool work and allocation of resource. So I think very interested to see how the consulting industry will be disrupted by the DAO structures and the co-op approach.
Yeah, great point, Leah. I just wanted to pull the thread a little bit more on what Ivan said. He hit a note. So if we look at I don't know what the exact statistics are, but if we look at the survey industry, I think it's probably a multi-billion-dollar industry where companies spend millions of dollars paying survey companies to go out there and assess their customers' wants and needs. Now, in a DAO, I'd rather put my marketing dollars directly to the customers who are interested in my products and understand what their needs are, understand what modifications I need to make to my product. So the DAOs are solving for a lot of, like Leah's been saying a few times now, is inefficiencies. The DAO is solving for a lot of inefficiencies, and we are able to direct our money to produce the best outcome, right, and make the largest impact directly to our customers, instead of putting paid ads on screens where maybe people who don't care about my product are looking at it, and I'm paying for that view.
Taking a down break, getting some interaction from the audience. Throw up a love heart if you'd want to talk on how to start a DAO and some tools. Throw up a clapping emoji if you want to talk about the limitations of a DAO. So love hearts or clapping emojis, love hearts. Let's talk about how to start a DAO. I guess the tools to start a DAO. I see a lot of love hearts. We actually have a 50-50 split. I saw the love hearts first, so we'll go to both. We'll touch on strategies, and then we'll have the last few minutes to get anybody up to ask some questions to this beautiful panel. Touching on how to start a DAO. I want to throw this to Dan, as I know personally he has started DAOs and advised on many. What are the first steps? What are we doing? Are we bringing the whole community? Are we getting mum and dad on the call and saying, jump in the DAO, buy this NFT to be a part of the community? How are we going about it, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge way to kind of answer that question. First and foremost, there needs to be some sort of problem that you're solving or something. Like a question you need to ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm trying to achieve here? And why is it that a DAO is actually going to work to my benefit? That's going to be a massive driving force for actually developing the DAO. And then I think it depends on where your potential project or product kind of sits in with the ecosystem of DAOs itself. So just kind of a quick breakdown. The way that I see DAOs is you've got at the kind of at the bottom tier, and not like in a ranking system, but if we think of it like a structure, at the bottom you've got micro DAOs, in the middle you've got DAOs themselves, and then at the top you've probably got macro DAOs. And I don't think macro DAOs have kind of been thought of, but explored heavily in the space just yet. And what I mean by macro DAOs is a good example of potentially a macro DAO is something called Kleros Court. Kleros Court, I don't know if anyone knows of Kleros, but it's essentially the idea behind Kleros is it aims to settle disputes or problems on chain that other protocols might have. So maybe there's for example, Uniswap. Maybe someone in Uniswap is using the protocol. Uniswap, of course, is governed by their community through the Uni token. Maybe there's a dispute on Uniswap and someone says, Uniswap, you're supposed to owe me this amount of money. You haven't paid me my 0.03% liquidity providing fee. And so that person may go to Kleros and actually say, hey, can you come and go to bat for me? Can you help me essentially dispute what I think has gone wrong with this particular project? And so Kleros is almost like a governing body of the governing bodies. DAOs themselves are projects that we're all familiar with: Decentraland, MakerDAO, Uniswap, MotorDAO, anything that you want to think of in that kind of area. Those are the players who kind of exist in the middle there, who are probably delivering a product or some sort of service to their community. And then micro DAOs are essentially DAOs that stem off of that middle layer. Micro DAOs are like pods of people, those who are acting in a group to deliver on a core mission that either aligns or relates back to the middle tier DAO that they're associated with. So maybe, for example, MotorDAO might have a micro DAO in future of artists who want a new product so that they can release their music as an album. And then maybe we fund those artists to start to build out that product or build out an idea for that product, and then start to kind of follow that trail along. So it's almost like micro DAOs themselves become self-governing. They kind of become their own isolated little force, as long as they're still continuing to deliver on the core mission of that midline DAO. So I know that probably got a little bit weedy for most people, but essentially the idea is ask yourself what problem you're trying to solve, and then try and figure out where your product or your project fits in with the larger scale market, and then start to push it from there. Pragmatically, you could go after the investing route, or you could go after the building community route, or you can go after the crowd sale route or Kickstarter route. Essentially, you're going to need some sort of funding, and then you can start to deliver on your core mission.
I feel a bit drawn, thanks, Daniel, to that conversation, because what I'm hearing is, are we thinking about we can create, DAOs within DAOs, kind of like, sub-DAO stacks, and for specific purposes that a community wants to, or a particular artist, say, for example, if they're a musician, want to achieve. So, there is a DAO that I'm working with that is creating DAOs within DAOs, and I think it's a very interesting approach to getting more efficiencies around, specific ideas. For example, if it's the purchase of property or some other asset, and creating a DAO structure around that. So, look, I don't know if others in the panel are working, with that type of approach, but I seem to think that, there are some great efficiencies that can be achieved by, thinking about creating DAO structures in that way. It is a bit weedy, but I think it could potentially, draw to the sub-DAOs, people who are really interested. You don't have to over solicit, too much information to people who really only are interested in one component of what the DAO is about. I know it's a bit theoretical, but any comments on that?
No, I love that Daniel said start with why, and painting that picture of the macro, the middle, and the micro DAO structure is super helpful. I'm probably going to be contacting you very soon, Daniel. I definitely will. Just to talk about sort of operationally how you would do it. This is something that me and my team, Valley is on the call here now. Valentina Colon, she's leading up our DAO efforts, but we've been looking into different ways of starting up DAOs. If we talk about legal entities here, we're looking at either Wyoming or Tennessee in the United States. that support these DAO structures. Specifically, City DAO. Sophie, you were talking about buying properties. City DAO actually bought a large parcel of land and is looking to develop there through the DAO and making decisions for development through the DAO, which is awesome. So we have the legal entities. There's something called a Series LLC, which supports the DAO structure, where if your DAO is buying assets, you're able to create in a Series LLC separate sort of compartmentalize your legal entities all under one master LLC. And then for tooling, I'd say to start, we initially started with Syndicate.io. And we've also discovered SuperDAO. Moralis is a little bit more technical, but is also something you can use to create a DAO. And then for decision making and coordination, the two ones that come to mind are Snapshot for voting, and then for coordination would be Coordinate.
Good stuff. I'm just going to jump in and just remind, for those that don't know, when you look at your screen on your phone, you'll see 3 dots. If you click on those 3 dots, it'll take you to view the event details. So a lot of people are DMing me with questions, and there's a few in there already. We're not going to get time to answer them. It doesn't mean we can't continue the conversation. So throw your questions up in the feed there. People on this call, in this session, can jump in and have those conversations. And again, last reminder from me is if you want to be included in the private group that we're going to set up, particularly on this topic, just let us know in the feed or DM us, because we're going to run out of time, unfortunately, and we've got a couple of new people that have come up. So Daniel, I'll let you drive, mate, but just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, being part of the Web3 ethos and DAO ethos of today's topic, I think is important for the next 14 minutes to touch on the individuals that have come up. So we've got Anok, apologies if I've mispronounced it, and John. Do you guys have any questions or comments to add to the conversation? And everyone else is free to come up as well. This is an open forum. It's an open space. Jump through.
Beautiful. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Very well, my friend.
Beautiful. So I had 2 points, which is one, that a lot of the power ends up being with people who craft the propositions. Do you know of DAOs that have used more detailed voting systems? So rather than being a yes or a no, which always ends up splitting a community down the middle, more or less, having people use voting systems that basically allow people to enter multiple proposals or propositions and have people give ranking votes and the tools that they use for those. Because I think that's so that was question 1. And question 2, we've touched on already, but it's, the need for operational efficiency, so separating the roles between people that, need to quickly enact some changes under sort of incident management conditions, and having the wider governance structure where you may want certain things to be voted on by everyone, or indeed that there are certain specialized roles for people to vote on, some aspects, but not on others.
So I think maybe Charlie, he was commenting on what we were talking about before in terms of some questions have more weight to them. Is that where you're going down, Anok?
Some questions have more weight to them. Yep. So there were 2 questions, really. Some questions have more weight to them. So how do you balance out the need to involve many people in some questions and also have, operational requirements for people to be able to step in when something goes wrong and needs rapid action? Because I know that, generally when a small subset of people pause contracts and those sorts of things, there's usually an outcry of centralization.
I'll throw it to Charlie and Dan on this one, and then I'll throw it to John to put in a question.
Perfect. Good questions, Anouk. So I found personally the best ways for a DAO to operate is in a modular and instead of a monolithic structure. So if you visualize that, instead of a huge pool of individuals with everyone having the same votes and same responsibilities and just getting swamped with decisions, it's a very inefficient way for a business to operate. Similarly to if, as I touched on before, if there was a marketing decision that was needed to be made, it would be a bad use of time and resources to include, say, the accountants and the CFOs in that decision making. So then that's where modulars that are basically designed within the DAO and DAOs within the DAO are responsible for a specific set of tasks. Then in terms of the voting mechanisms, I found that quadratic voting as a whole is the most efficient use or the most efficient implementation, which basically makes people conscious of where they're weighting their votes. So that sort of summarizes it, but I'll be interested to hear Daniel's thoughts if there's anything else that...
Yeah, so Charlie, all great points. This might be a little bit of a polarizing thought, actually, just because I'm hearing efficiency thrown around a lot. Personally, I don't actually think DAOs have to be all that efficient. I think efficiency comes from potentially corporate governance. I think non-efficiency potentially comes from like political science or democracy in a way. We all know how inefficient governments are. But I think inefficiency could actually be something that it works on some sort of level. Reason being, if we all use it as a thought experiment, a stable coin does not need to be efficient. A stable coin, first and foremost, needs to be decentralized and stable. So a DAO, in my opinion, is sort of similar to that aspect. A DAO doesn't necessarily need to be efficient. It just needs to be decentralized and organized properly. So maybe if we think about some sort of, when you're talking about voting and you're talking about how to make sure that certain questions are answered by, correct people, and you're not asking someone if they want to paint the walls blue to, 1 million people, because obviously that's inefficient and that's unnecessary in my opinion. You can think of like an hourglass model. So maybe you've got a decentralized alignment and accountability layer, and you've got a centralized management and execution layer. So alignment on the core mission, what are we delivering on? What is the why? What are we trying to achieve here? Accountability, are we all actually doing what we need to be doing? And are we all looking at each other when things aren't going, like, are we all tapping each other on the shoulder and saying, have you completed your task? That's the accountability. And then once we have that task and we've delivered on it, we can then move it to a management and execution layer that has been built specifically to execute on completing that task. Whether that means actually just executing it from a core team level or pushing it out to some sort of voting proposal and some sort of voting mechanism.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and I think the word I was looking for was not necessarily efficiency, but responsiveness for incident management as opposed, in that regard. But yeah, voting is not known for its efficiency.
I want to throw this over to John. John, do you have a question or a statement you want to add in?
Yeah, definitely. Just a statement. Firstly, very informative space. Thank you very much. Really wish there was a way that these could be recorded. Someone will have to get on that soon. But on the topic of kind of governance, there was a really large exploit. I've actually replied it in the comments. I did just want to share that inefficient voting systems can lead to huge repercussions. So there's a protocol called Beanstalk, and due to a flash loan exploit, they did end up losing $181 million from a malicious actor. So for those who aren't aware, a flash loan, you can essentially borrow tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, pay a very minimal fee, provided you pay the transaction back within one block. So you can't really borrow a lot of money and pay it to yourself. You can effectively borrow that and use it to, maybe make some arbitrage profits or exploit an opportunity. So effectively, someone did use a lot of that money to essentially win over a lot of the voting power, buy it, and then pass some emergency proposals that ended up going through and stealing a lot of money. So just wanted to throw that out there, that when it comes to governance, especially when it comes to DeFi protocols, the stakes have never really been higher at any point in human history, right? So I just really wanted to kind of emphasize that if you don't get governance right for your protocol, you can effectively lose it all. And obviously, once you destroy that confidence and faith in your users, when they get when they wake up and they see their stable coin, which is meant to be $1 trading at 20 cents, that can have quite disastrous consequences. And you can effectively make sure that you can basically ensure at that point that they won't come back and invest or put any money into your protocol. So they have done an airdrop. They are slowly rebuilding, which is quite impressive. But their TVL has been drastically reduced. They had to issue a new token, and I'm sure it was a lot of stress and a huge headache for everyone. So it really goes a long way just to put in that time at the beginning to ensure that your governance proposal is fair, and that there aren't any emergency proposals that you can put in to basically destroy the protocol, because there are people in this space who would voluntarily do that. So wanted to share that aspect of DAOs and governance.
John, you're a legend. You're a wealth of knowledge, my friend, every time. The thing that I wanted to touch on, coming back to what Nick mentioned, I think you mentioned some key names, and I just want to write them accordingly in the comments. You mentioned, was it Syndicate.io, Morella DAO to create, Snapshot for decision making, and Coordinate for coordination. Can you repeat those? I think that's extremely valuable for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put them in the comments, no problem. Yeah. So to create the DAO, to create it for it to be on chain, you create your governance token, etc. There's Syndicate.io and SuperDAO are probably the two of the more popular ones. Then if you are technical, you have a technical co-founder and they want more customization, besides what is offered packaged through these sort of as a service solutions, you can use Moralis. Moralis is a fairly tenured Web3 development sort of infrastructure platform. They have very great learning content on how to do these things, seemingly easy. I haven't used it though. And then for coordination of work, is Coordinape. So it's like coordinate, but ape at the end. And then finally, there is Snapshot. Snapshot's a very popular open source platform that DAOs use to create or to allow their members to create proposals, and then for everybody in the DAO to come in and vote on those proposals. And all these decisions are on chain.
I might just...
real quickly, I'd be remiss, and Valley would probably joke with me for not saying, there is also guilds.xyz. I don't fully understand the scope of what they do, but she's been raving about them for a while now, so I want to put them out there as well.
Yeah, so just on that, Nick, when it comes to guilds, so you can actually create, for example, with a POAP. So a POAP is kind of a free attendance badge that you can claim from coming to an event. Cough, cough, like NFT Melbourne or NFT Sydney, we've had POAPs in the past, but many meetups in the Australian space have had POAPs you can claim. You can actually build a token-gated community around that. And effectively what that means is only if you own the POAP can you join an exclusive group chat. You can organize airdrops. There's a lot of utility that you can build around POAPs, which are free to claim and super awesome. So you can actually download the POAP app, input your email address, and effectively kind of create a token-gated community there without going through all the hassles of setting up a wallet, writing down your seed phrase, funding it with Ethereum, going through an exchange, and so on and so forth. So I think that may essentially be a way to onboard a lot of people into this governance and DAO model without even realizing, right? It's just you go to a party, you go to an event or a festival, and you download an app, and suddenly you're part of something and you can vote on what happens next. So very bullish on technology that removes a lot of the steps. And looking forward to kind of seeing those more platforms like that kind of evolve.
Legend. Thank you everyone for the questions. I want to thank the panel that was here today. We appreciate your time, effort. I know over here it's a Thursday morning, and Nick, for yourself, you probably at a later time in the day. So we appreciate your time, effort, and wealth of knowledge. If you want to connect to any of these individuals, hit their profile. You can click it again, and you can follow them or connect with them. Send them a DM. We've got some key mentions from Lai on community DAOs and their importance, Daniel on micro and macro DAOs, Charlie on modular structures, delegation, quadratic voting, Nick mentioned some best use cases and frameworks. And so if you're on DAOs and research, which I'm quite fascinated on because I haven't heard anybody talk about those. So I'll add those into the comments. You can reach out to those individuals. It's been a pleasure touching on what we have moving forward regarding topics. Keep up to date with Ivan and myself if you'd like to speak on a panel or put forth some examples of conversations, more so topics of conversations. We'll continue these spaces every fortnight and across Twitter spaces, but more so reach out to us if we can help in any manner or connect you to somebody that can, because that is the Web3 ethos, Web3 ecosystem, and we're trying to help out as many people as we can on board and businesses as well. I'm going to throw this to Ivan to close the space, my friend.
Good stuff. Well, first and foremost, I thank you everyone, particularly everyone on the panel. We've got an amazing group of people as I scroll through some familiar faces, some I don't know, which is, both are good. John, to your comment earlier, you're probably not old enough, but when I was a kid, a song came on TV and I'd pull out the tape recorder and record it. I've done that for this. So I've actually recorded this off my iPad. So it's not going to sound amazing, but I will upload it because there'll be people in this room now that might have a colleague or a partner or want to reflect on some of what's been covered. So we'll share that as a link. So people can check that out. And fingers crossed, LinkedIn catch up to technology and allow us to record it properly in the future. But other than that, everybody, again, thank you. Much love, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. It's been wonderful to be part of this conversation with you all.
Much love.
Thanks everyone.
Community.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.